What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and prop preview for round 2 of the Sanderson Farms Championship. Gonna try and squeeze this in there before Thursday Night Football. Get you ready for all of your exposure out there for Friday at this event, whether it's on the DFS side for Showdown or for props on Underdog and Prize Picks. And because we're trying to squeeze this in, we're gonna keep this one really quick. So if you have any questions, still feel free to go ahead and throw those down in chat. But this is going to be an expedited version of this live stream. First off, what's going on, Joseph? What is going on, Zach, down there? Hopefully you guys are having a solid evening yourselves, and you got ourselves a Coke. It's what I had with my dinner a half an hour ago, so nothing too interesting from the drink perspective. Before we really dive on into all the goods here tonight, just want to remind you guys of our presenting sponsor of the live stream. Those, of course, are our friends over there at the Ship It Nation, which are your source for all your needs on DFS. So if you're signing up over there, if you're new to the Ship It Nation, use code Luke10 off any membership, and they've got you covered for a variety of sports. So as I said, NFL, you've got golf over there as well, but if you're an MMA player, NBA when that comes around, hockey, variety of different sports that you see on the graphic there, make sure to check them out. But that's what we got for the sponsorship section here. But let's start it off with a look at this golf course. So today it played a lot easier in the afternoon, which if you were there for our live stream yesterday, you heard that that was going to be a possibility. I thought with the warmer temperatures that it might play easier as the day went on, especially with the wind staying relatively low. The winds actually kicked up, I would say, a little bit more than expected. So if we go over here to the observed weather today, you'll see in the morning, it was sub 5-6 miles an hour the entire time. In the afternoon, it got to 6, 7, and even 11 miles an hour plus for the last few hours. So there was a pretty significant increase out there in that velocity, but the scoring down here was much easier as the day went on. In fact, it was a whole 1.34 shots easier towards the afternoon. So even with a little bit of wind in the forecast for tomorrow, I'm thinking you're going to see a lot of the same. So speaking of, let's bring up that weather forecast. And what you'll see is that in the morning, there's next to no wind, but it is going to be significantly warmer in the afternoon. So if you don't know how that works, ball flies further when it's a little bit warmer out there. And at a longer golf course, like what we have here at Jackson Club of Country Club of Jackson, it makes quite a difference when it comes to the scoring. So you can see in the afternoon, the winds get to that 9-10 mile an hour range. It looks like it's going to last a little bit longer than what you had towards the end of this afternoon. But I have to imagine that it's still going to favor those later starters, as it was a 1.34 shot difference. That is massive. It's nearly a stroke and a half between the two waves. A little bit of wind for an hour or two is not going to change that. So what you'll see over there in our exposure is that I'm looking for a lot of PM wave players that might end up at slightly lower ownership. A lot of your casuals, a lot of people that maybe aren't going to put in their due diligence on a week like this are likely just going to stack the AM wave, right? But they might not even know that the PM played so much easier. So try and take advantage of that a little bit. So partially, you can see on here tomorrow, there's a little bit of rain towards midday. So maybe that'll soften things up out there towards the afternoon. And the forecast that we're looking at here, the HRRR, they're not calling for that. I guess if we look for a few others, we might find it. Yeah, you can see here, right? A little bit of rain in the afternoon tomorrow. So maybe there's a stoppage. Oftentimes, those summer showers come with a little bit of lightning, some electricity in the air that might halt play. But for our sake, I just hope that we don't get a delay. If so, it's going to bleed into Saturday. But that's it from the weather perspective. The first thing I want to look at before we get over to the DFS side is some of the top ball strikers from today. So on top of that weather edge, the other way to try and find some of your top plays would be to look at the ball striking stats. So you can see over here, I have this sorted by shots gained ball striking. You have a lot of guys that are playing in the morning towards the top end of the board here. So like an Eric Cole, for example, is an AM wave player. I believe that David Skins is also, actually not so sure. I think he is a PM wave player, but he's super chalky out there for round 2 Showdown. Really, the only PM guys that you have up here would be an Alejandro Tosti, who'll be playing at some of the better conditions. And if you start to go a little bit further down the board, you find some more PM guys, like Mackenzie Hughes, for example. He's somebody that'll be in the PM wave for round 2. So if you can find that marry that difference between the weather edge and trying to find somebody who hit the ball well, that's where you can really go out there and find an edge. So let me bring up our DFS sheet. We'll talk through some of the options that I'm getting to, and it's going to be a lot of what I just said. I'm looking for some ball strikers, looking for some upside out there in round 2 Showdown, and if they can be a PM wave player, even better out there in my exposure. Let's see what we got. Any comments down there? McCarty is legit. Yeah, he looked pretty solid out there today. Good to see Gary Woodland show a little bit of form. I agree. Great guy. He's actually from the town that I'm in down here in Florida. He's got to keep it up, though. The putter definitely bailed him out a little bit, but a great start for him for sure, which is always great to see. But let's talk through this player pool a little bit. So it's all going to be PM Wave players, and it's all going to be low-owned players, because if there's anything you can use to grind out ROI in Showdown, it's a weather edge, which we've already talked about extensively, and then it's playing the game theory edge. Round 2 Showdown is usually the best place to do so, because after round 1, you're going to get a lot of overreactions. You're going to get people that are going out there playing your skins at -12, right? Some of those guys that went out there just nuked in round 1, oftentimes have a hard time backing it up in round 2. Part of that is psychological, and part of that is just good old statistical regression, right? If you play way over your head on one day, it's not like you're necessarily due to go out there and fail the next day. It's that over the next, 4 or 5 round sample size that you're likely going to come back down to earth a little bit. So after round 1, it's oftentimes a good play to go out there and fade those players, because the general public, the consensus out there, are going to play those guys more than the guys that struggled. So our strategy is to try and find some PM Wave players that played okay round 1, maybe not great, maybe not horrible, that have that incentive, that have that potential to go out there and have himself a big day. So I think nothing encapsulates that more than maybe a Nick Dunlap towards the top end of the board, who was one of our favorite plays heading into the week. -3 was far from a poor round, right? All things considered, it was slightly better than average, and he's got the nuts conditions out there. He was missing a lot of really makeable putts. Off the top of my head, he had at least 3 putts from less than 6 feet that he ended up lipping out at one point of his round, and he still had 6 birdies on the round. So it's not like he had a lack of scoring by any means, and now he gets the better conditions out there for round 2 and perhaps a little bit of putting regression. So you can see right there, he's 16.9% owned. Of course, guys, for everything that is blacked out, make sure to check out my Patreon page. On there, you can get my entire player pool, all the projections that are here in the black sections. But yeah, 16.9% ownership, to circle back on that, is not very high compared to some of the other players in this range. I've got Keith Mitchell, for example. He is a PM Wave player, so I think he's in my player pool. I'll just say that outright right now. He is in my player pool, but he's over 20% ownership, for example. And Mackenzie Hughes is well over 25% projected ownership. So this 16.9% number right here is actually relatively low compared to other players in that range. Moving down a little bit further, I guess to point out some chalk here, Ben Griffin's going to be exceptionally popular. McCarty and Eric Cole also going to draw a lot of attention, a lot of because of how they played today, right? -6, -8 round out there for Ben Griffin, but also because they're in the AM wave, where a lot of casuals might think it'll play easier. The guys that I'd prefer to take would be a PM option like Adam Svensson, who only shot -2, which is very pedestrian at this kind of event, but he's sub 10% ownership, which in this 8K range is extremely rare to come by. In fact, there are only, I think, a handful of players that are $7,500 and above that you're getting at sub 10% ownership. So, I mean, even this top end of the 7K range, you've got guys at higher ownership than an Adam Svensson, and he's one of the top 15, top 20 players in this field, and I don't think you can sleep on him out there from round to round. So, and it's not even like he played poorly, right? It's -2 for Svenny, right? -3 out there for Nick Dunlop. These are average, maybe slightly above average rounds, and they're going to be lower owned because of that, right? Because they're not that shiny toy, that sexy round that went out there and shot like -5, -6. It's hard to back that up. It's a little bit easier to back up a -5, -6 than something like -7, -8, but the same idea holds, right? The better you score out there in round 1, psychologically a little bit harder to go out there and reproduce that. A little bit further down the board, we've got Andrew Novak as an option. I like it about $8,000. You see, I have him at 9.9% projected ownership, -2, very mediocre round out there for today, but the kind of guy that's been ball striking the shit out of it. And if you take a look at his stats out there from round 1, did exactly that. So if you can get a hot putter, try and get something going on these Bermuda greens, which has been a little bit of an issue for him over his career. He's not the best Bermuda grass putter, but if he could turn that around, he has some upside. We've got Taylor Moore as well, another -2, which I think the -2, -3 range is kind of the sweet spot, because you're getting guys that are engaged, right? They're near the cut line, so they've got to go out there and give it their all out there in round 2, but they're also not going to be overly chalky. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these guys as my highlighted plays, because I think that they're, like I said, the sweet spot for going out there and finding a solid play. So Taylor Moore, a guy that I liked at this golf course, solid Bermuda grass putter, and ball striking stats were good enough for me out there in round 1. Luke List, former champion at this golf course. They've got him at sub 5% ownership, which is starting to get to the real leverage range towards the bottom end of the board. I mean, you throw him in 25% of your lineups, and that's 4 or 5x right there. So that's easy leverage for me, especially on a player that has good vibes around Country Club of Jackson. In comparison, I like Thor Bjornsson this week. I love his -9 round in terms of our outright, but for a showdown round, he's not my favorite play. Right? He is a PM wave golfer. He's got that going for him. But when we have a guy like List that's 3 times lower owned, and he's actually won at this golf course before, I'd rather have Luke List for round 2. So I think that's a good comparison right there between some of the chalky guys and some of the lower owned players that I prefer for round 2. And Thor Bjornsson, as mentioned, was somebody that I bet outright at this event. Davis Riley down here at $7,200, a player that has said that this is his 5th major of the year. So obviously a little bit tongue in cheek there when he was saying that, but he really cares about this event. He's always showing up to it. Hasn't had that much success here, but what I do like, he's a good Bermuda grass putter. He fits the golf course, the kind of mold that we're looking for in a player here. We want to get par 5 score, a high birdie or better percentage player. He checks both of those boxes emphatically, and he's a PM wave guy at sub 2% ownership. So, narrative aside, I think he's a really solid play. But then when you add the fact on top of that at +3, he's not going to give up because of how much he cares about this event, is why I'll play him at +3, right? There are guys in this field that I would not play at that kind of score, that I know that they're going to bitch quit right out there in round 2. Davis Riley's not going to do that at his quote-unquote 5th major. We've also got Garrick Higo, a player with a really good course history around here. He's had, I believe, 2 top 20 finishes in a row around the Sanderson Farms. Might even been top 10 finishes. And I have to double check that over there in another tab. But yeah, Garrick Higo at $7,000, another really good par 5 scorer. He's a long player off the tee, can access some of the more scoreable holes. They had a drivable par 4 out there for round 1 as well, which he can easily get to even with a 3-wood with his length. So yeah, I like him in a showdown format, right? He's +2. He's going to bring you a lot of a low floor, I should say, a lot of risk when you're using this kind of option, but he's also infinite leverage towards the bottom end of the board. Taylor Montgomery, I'm playing at +2 as well. So you're starting to see some really nasty plays down here in the 6K range, because I don't want to take guys that are going to have 3 to 5% ownership. Like, as much as Matthew Neesmith, some of these like -6 to -8 guys would be great to go out there and tail, like a Kevin Hugh, for example. They're going to be 10 times higher owned in some cases than the guys around them. And if not, at the very least, like 3 to 4 times higher owned. Down low, I want my pivots, I want my flyers to be exactly that. I want them to be low owned to guys I can get pretty much infinite leverage on. So as heard me talk about Taylor Montgomery yesterday, started -3 in his round, really fell apart on his last, I think it was 11 holes that he struggled. If he can turn it around, get it going in the PM wave that plays easier, he'd be great at 2% ownership. Then the last player, I pointed out Toasty before. He's a PM wave golfer for tomorrow, and he was your number 3 ball striker in the field. He's hitting the shit out of it. He was playing on the quote-unquote harder wave out there in round number 1, and he's going to be sub 5% owned. So despite him playing pretty well, right, you've got guys in that -5, -6 range, right? David Skins, for example, that's taken away a lot of ownership at -12. So you're getting him at sub 5%. I honestly, in this range, 2.5% ownership is a little bit higher than some of the other players. But at the same time, Toasty hit the ball better than all but 2 players in the field. You're giving me the nutted conditions. He's a great par 5 scorer. He kind of fits that Garrick Higo mold, where he's long off the tee, a really high birdie or better percentage player, just like a Taylor Montgomery too. He's that same sort of guy. Those are the players that I love at this golf course, and particularly from the showdown format, when you've got to get it to a -6, -7 for the optimal. So it's going to be a lot of that birdie fest the entire week. I would get used to what you saw out there in round number 1, because without a lot of wind, doesn't look like it's going to be there for Friday. You're going to see these guys absolutely tear this place up. So that's what I'll say for my player poll. Again, keeping this a little bit quicker because we got Thursday Night Football starting in about a minute here, but we still got the prop side to talk about and some lineup construction. So let's dive onto that here rather quickly. And I knew we were going to bleed into Thursday Night Football, so it's all right. But I wanted to get through that main portion before the game started. So let's see. Any questions down there before we get into that? Eric Cole, he is an AM wave golfer, so that would be my one issue with him for Showdown. But he hit the ball really well. He was one of those top scorers out there in terms of shots gained ball striking, which is impressive stuff. I bet him for an outright, so I hope he keeps it going. But the weather edge isn't there, so I'll stay off it. Pearson Coody had a bunch of birdies, but struggled short game wise. Yeah, he could easily turn it around, right? The birdies are more so what we're worried about. You need him to make the cut. That's important for your, 4-round lineups. But those birdies, he makes 6 birdies around. Who cares if he finishes in 50th place, right? Because he's going to get us all those fantasy points. All of those kind of guys that scored, but just were a little bit sloppy are perfect for Showdown. Cleaning up your play is a lot easier than going from making no birdies to making like 10. It's hard to get the putter just to flip, right? It's hard to set up opportunities out of nowhere. He was clearly still setting up opportunities. He was just probably having some brain farts. So yeah, I definitely like that kind of player. And I think you could apply that logic that we just went through there and use it for pretty much anyone in the field, right? If they're around the green, for example, Mark Hubbard, I believe lost like 3 strokes around the green or something atrocious like that. That's probably not going to happen again, right? In fact, let me just bring up the tab real quick and show you guys. So if we sort this by shots gained around the green, like Hayden Buckley is probably not losing 3 strokes around the green. Mark Hubbard, who's, by the way, a really good around the green player, is not going to lose 2.5 strokes around the green again. These kind of guys would be really good bounce back spots, especially when the ball striking is combined with it. And the reason why I want to point out Mark Hubbard, I suppose, is that look at this, right? The ball striking is there as well. Unfortunately, Hubbard is an AM wave player. That would be the one downside to using him in Showdown. But yeah, some AM wave guys could get there, by the way. Just because I'm stacking the PM wave does not mean that all 6 players are for sure going to be PM wave players. But anytime you have an edge like that, you want to lean into it. That's for sure. Who played too well today that we can't expect a repeat performance from? Great question, by the way. And we're on the right tab to look at that sort of thing. Usually we look at the putting stats, right? We try and find who putted way over their head. Hayden Springer gained nearly 5 strokes putting. It's hard to believe that he's going to go out there and do that again. David Skins gained 3.5 strokes putting himself. The thing with Skins, though, is that he gained 5 strokes approach. So that's obviously a pretty sweet stat profile to have. But yeah, Hayden Springer probably played above his head. Let's look at the around the green poppers. Somebody like Ben Griffin. I mean, look at this. 3 strokes putting, 2.8 strokes with the around the green play. That's probably a little bit too good to be true, you would say. I would say Ben Griffin, your top candidate. And then, yeah, Hayden Springer with the 5 shots gained putting. It's going to be pretty tough to go out there and replicate that. Of course. I got you, Zach. Best of luck out there with your lineups tomorrow. Let's do a little lineup construction segment. So going to keep this one rather quickly here. When you're building your lineups out here for round 2 Showdown, if you're leaning into a weather edge, obviously make sure your guys are playing in the PM wave. And then if you're taking low-owned options in at least 4 of your spots, you should be good out there for the large field GPP. So for the sake of this, I'm going to play some of the higher owned guys up top that are playing in the PM wave, just to show you that you can still get away with it out there in some of your lineups. So if you want a little bit chalkier up top, I think the place to do it, the place to eat some extra chalk might be towards the top end of the board. Let's throw in a Mackenzie Hughes there. Let me see. Who else is a high-owned PM guy? Let me look through this. So I guess Jaeger? I mean, he's not that high owned, I suppose. We could go with McNeely. He'd be a little bit chalkier. So let's do that. Let's go with the double spend up. Let's take Mackenzie Hughes there, and then let's go Mav McNeely as our second man in. So these would be 2 relatively chalky players out there for round 2 Showdown. And yeah, McNeely is a PM wave player. Even if you took the worst options that you possibly could up top, you still got 4 spots to get that leverage. So down here in that 8K range, top end of the 7s, let's try and find a PM guy for some leverage. So I think Novak would fit that perfectly. Towards the middle to top end of the 7K range, a Taylor Moore would fit this kind of lineup as well. We could throw in, let's see, a Goddard. I believe he's also a PM wave player. Let me double check on that before I'm throwing him in the lineup. Where we at? Good old Goddard. He's what, like $7,400? He's AM wave actually. So Goddard would not work for this. Good thing I double checked on that there. In that range, who's PM wave? Schmid's PM. CT Pan is who we're going to use here. Let's throw CT Pan into this lineup. Fantastic course history, relatively low owned because of his slow start. So this lineup right here, we're not going to click all 6 because DraftKings frowns upon you giving all 6 players in a lineup. Even if you wanted to start off a little bit chalkier, as long as your players with the 8K range and below are going to be sub 10% owned, you're totally fine. Like a Novak here is 9.9% ownership. A Taylor Moore, let me double check exactly. He's 6.8% owned. And then you've got a last player in there, CT Pan is sub 5% owned. those three players alone are probably enough leverage for the large field GPP. But you add in one more guy that's sub 5, sub 7% owned, and you're for sure fine, regardless of the contest you're entering. It could be the biggest showdown contest that you have for round 2. You're likely going to be unique. You're likely going to have the leverage that you need. And if you're in a single entry, a smaller field GPP, you don't even have to be as different as what you are here. So the game theory edge matters. But I feel like when you tell people to play low-owned players, when you tell people to go out there and get different to the field, they just take it too far, right? So this is why I like to have this talk when we get to the lineup construction segment, because when I say get different, I mean get different within reason. Still play the guys that hit the ball well, the guys that project well for round 2. Just don't play all the chalk together, right? Is more what people like myself and other touts out there mean when we say to get different, right? To play that game theory edge. So just showing you guys what that looks like in practice, what you can do if you're taking some chalk up top, and to go out there and build a few lineups. Where did we leave off? Skins went off. You accidentally put Cootie instead of Pearson in, and it worked out. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the Cootie twins. You can easily mix them up. They look the same too. If you haven't seen them in real life, they're identical twins, I believe. And then Skins went off. He did. And I played him in lineups, so I'm pretty happy about it. But he's going to screw up my outrights if he does that again, because if he gets to 20 under par after 2 rounds, we're really in trouble. You're the man, of course. Appreciate that, Kep. And best of luck out there with your exposure, dude. All right, let's talk through some prop stuff. So as I said, I want to keep this going so I don't miss too much of this Thursday night football game. I've got a lot of exposure in, obviously, as you guys know. But let's talk through the averages. So scoring average today, if we just look through the AM and the PM wave, was minus 2.84. I'll remind you, though, if you're just joining us, maybe you're skipping to the prop section here, that the scoring average was vastly different throughout the day, right? Early, it was only playing about 2.2 under par. Afternoon, 3.5 strokes under par. So a 1.34 shot difference, as I outlined before, is massive between the AM and the PM. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that out there with your props for round 2. Your birdie average also really fluctuated throughout the day. It was just under 4.5 per round early and about 5 per round out there in the PM wave. So once again, depending on when somebody's teeing off, you might want to consider that out there for tomorrow. The pin locations for today also were extremely soft. This scoring average of 2.8 under par was one of the best that we've ever seen at Country Club of Jackson. So I would expect it to maybe get a little harder out there for round 2. So when we're looking at these averages, I would maybe take it to like 2.5 under par for the scoring average. Birdie average, maybe close to like 4.6 per round. Bogey average, maybe it goes from like 1.9 to 2 bogeys per round. Just minute little differences, but they will matter when it comes to the prop perspective. And then at the bottom down here, I've also got the Euro Tour averages. The entire board that they have up on Prize Picks are guys playing at the Kingsbarn Golf Course. And there's a reason why I wanted to put these stats on here. I haven't entered anything on that side quite yet. I probably will at some point. The scoring average was minus 4.13, which is crazy. It was a 67 scoring average. And the birdie average, I have never seen this before. I don't think we'll ever see this, was 5.75. And I just want to circle over to this because it's unbelievable. It wasn't even the good players over there on the DP World Tour that were playing that golf course. If we look at the leaderboard over here, who the hell is John Cameron? I don't even know who that is. Darren Fichtart. I mean, I've seen him on DP World Tour leaderboards, but he's not that good, right? You've got all these guys that played Kingsbarn. I mean, look at this, -9 for this Andrew Wilson. I honestly don't know who that is. There are guys on here that I've hardly even seen on DP World Tour leaderboards that shot -8, -9 easily at that golf course. So to circle back to the averages, and by the way, if you haven't seen the Prize Picks board yet, it's like Rory, John Rahm. It's all the world's best players that are playing at this golf course. Their birdie average is going to be over 6 per round, which we've never seen before. We'll probably never see it again. So I wanted to point that out. If you're playing over there on the DP World Tour side, even with some wind, it's supposed to be a little bit windier out there for round 2. They are going to murder that golf course. I mean, the scoring average for like guys like Rory and whatnot might be -6 or something. I mean, like I said, nothing that we've ever seen before. So if you're going to enter on the DP World Tour side, just know that it is a even bigger birdie fest than what we have over here on the PGA side. So speaking of, let me actually bring up Prize Picks real quick. We're going to go ahead, take a look if they have boards up. I'm not sure if they've posted them quite yet. If not, we'll do some Euro Tour stuff. We can do that in the meantime and talk a game plan for PGA, which I've already thought through a little bit of a game plan out here for round 2. So let's see. Anything posted on Underdog yet? So nothing posted over here. Let's see. Anything on Prize Picks for PGA? So yeah, nothing in terms of a PGA board yet. I guess just not to go full into the DP World Tour stuff yet. In terms of the Sanderson Farms props, like I said, I think it's going to play a little bit harder. So we don't have the pricing, right? I don't know what we're going to get for projections. My guess would be that it's going to be lower in terms of your strokes. As the day went on, Prize Picks bumped down all of their strokes by 0.5. Some of them ended up getting bumped an entire stroke, and then they bumped up a majority of the board from 4.5 to 5 birdies, especially any like the competent players that were going off in the PM wave. So to have to imagine with these averages that they're going to make the board even lower. And just like I said for round 1, by the way, round 1 we profited heavily going out there and fading players, and it's crazy, right? I faded players and we profited heavily today with a minus 2.8 average. And there's a reason I'm pointing this out, guys, okay? It played easy as hell. Like, this is as easy as the golf course has ever played. And betting against players was the plus EV move. If it's going to play harder tomorrow, especially because the pin locations aren't going to be as easy, maybe that drivable par 4 isn't as reachable out there for tomorrow. If it only plays 2 under par, it's going to be even better to go out there and fade players. So the PSA, what I'm going to be doing for my exposure is likely trying to find fades to go out there and mix in. So it worked for round 1. We had a 3-man 5X slip that ended up carrying us with our ROI. And I'm probably going to be doing a lot of the same, trying to find some 3-man fade slips to go out there and enter. We're going to look at the Eurogolf. Maybe we'll get a board as we spend 5-10 minutes talking about the Eurogolf stuff, but we'll have to see. So the Eurogolf stuff, in the meantime, they've got these guys at like 5 under par. So it's a par 72 to shoot a 67. That would be a -5. The players that I was looking at, as I was looking at this Højgaard prop in particular, whether it's Rasmus or Nikolai, at 68.5, they've got to shoot -4 in the scoring average. And this was the weaker part of the field that was playing at Kingsbarn in round number 1, played to a -4 average. So it played easier, right, than a 68 average. And they've got these guys at 68.5 strokes. So I was looking at these before. I'm not sure if I'm going to get exposure to them. If I had to choose between the two, I would probably go with Nikolai, as I think he's the better long-term player between the two options. And what we could do, and kind of my game plan over here for Prize Picks, is to potentially take a prop like this and then match it up with some Prize Pick stuff for PGA, right? So when we get the PGA board for the Sanderson Farms, to try and wash away the multiplier that we get on some correlation, you might want to mix in something on the Eurogolf side. So that's probably what I'm going to do with my exposure on Prize Picks, is try and mix the two events to try and get a better payout out there on our slips. Underdog, we're not going to have that luxury, but they also usually post bogey lines. Maybe they'll get a little bit more selection this time around. Their round 1 selection wasn't really what we were hoping for. We'll have to see what they give us out there. Speaking of, before I get too far into this, I want to see what's going on in that game. Because the game started like 13 minutes ago. It looked like Kirk Cousins had some yardage. So it looks like the Falcons probably scored. Look at that. They scored a touchdown. Was it Bijan or was it a passing touchdown? Passing touchdown to Drake London, who I also bet on. Okay. Let's see. Bijan hasn't done shit so far. I just need him to get in the end zone at some point tonight. And Mike Evans already has 2 catches. That is beautiful. Okay. Don't want to spend too much time looking at my phone on this live stream, but that is an ideal start for me out here tonight. Is an advantage due to the wind later in the day? No, Phil. So you might want to go to the beginning of the live stream to catch in on it. Today, if we circle back to the PGA side here, the wind kicked up as the day went on. So you'll see here in the morning, right, it was subs, 4 or 5 miles an hour for most of the morning. As the day went on, 7, 11 miles an hour, right, 9 miles an hour towards the afternoon. It kicked up a little bit today, and it was a 1.34 shot difference. So even if it is a little bit windier in the afternoon, which it is over here on the forecast, I don't think that makes the PM harder, right? The PM was 1.34 shots easier. It's got to be a lot of wind, right, to make up for a shot and a half difference. And it's only like 9 miles an hour winds. So if we go over here to the HRRR, this will be the more accurate forecast for tomorrow. It's 9 to 10 miles an hour sustained. So I think you'd be overthinking it a little bit if you went out there and played AM guys. Looks like the other guys are going to get the advantage. So that's all we've got, though, guys. It doesn't look like we're going to have a board to look at, unfortunately. If I was going to bet anything, just to give you guys maybe a few ideas, I'd be looking at some overs on bogeys if they put a few out there. I'm thinking they might even hang 1.5 bogeys out there for the field because of how easy it played today. If they do that, I'll bet some overs at 1.5 bogeys. If they post 5.5 birdie lines, unders on those. I would take unders on 5.5s. I don't want to say for anyone in the field, but for a lot of guys, I take an under at 5.5. What else? I guess strokes lines, if they're given a 66s or 66.5s, which they're probably not. Wrong line. 68s or 68.5s out there on players. I'm probably going to take some overs at that too. But that's all I've got, guys. Going to go ahead and watch our Thursday night football here. But best of luck with all of your exposure out there for tomorrow. Go out there, win a GPP for me. Go out there, cash some prop slips as well. Patreon page is the place to be for all of my golf projections and content. And let's have ourselves a Friday, guys.